It began not with a trumpet fanfare or a blaze of flashbulbs, but with the soft, deliberate click of a lock turning in a door that was never supposed to be closed to staff. Buckingham Palace, an organism that thrives on routine and ritual, experienced a seismic disruption on a night in late autumn, a night that royal insiders have since come to call the Consolidation. King Charles III, who had spent the better part of his first years on the throne navigating political tightropes and familial fractures, did something that shocked even his most seasoned private secretaries. He signed a sealed royal order, a letter's patent of a design so rare it had not been seen in active duty since the reign of George III. With that single stroke of his pen, he granted his only sister Princess and the title of Princess Royal Regent. It is a title that exists in the shadowy hinterlands of the Constitution, a role that implies not just honor, but operational power. To understand why this happened, one must forget everything they think they know about royal ceremonies. This was not about ribbons or medals. This was about the survival of the crown itself. For the first few hours, the palace machinery did what it does best. It tried to bury the news in bureaucracy. The order was classified not as a constitutional amendment, but as a household appointment, a designation usually reserved for the hiring of a new equerry or a deputy master of the household. But word, as it always does in the gilded cages of London's royal parks, leaked. It was not a scream of a leak, but a whisper, a mention in a diplomatic cable, a confused query from a senior civil servant who noticed that the Princess Royal security detail had been quietly tripled and that her codebreaker clearance had been elevated to a level usually reserved for the sovereign alone. The Princess Royal Regent is not a ceremonial consort. Historically, the title has acted as the monarch's plenipotentiary, the one person who can chair the Council of State, sign instruments of government, and receive the seals of office if the sovereign is temporarily incapacitated, without triggering a full-scale regency that would involve Parliament. It is, in essence, the nuclear option of royal delegation. Why now? The official narrative, carefully curated by a weary palace press office, points to pragmatism. King Charles is 75 years old. He has endured a grueling schedule of state visits and charity galas, all while managing the relentless scrutiny of a modern media age. But those close to the family know the truth is far more granular and urgent. The king's health, while publicly managed as under control, has required periods of absolute rest that the Constitution does not easily accommodate. Furthermore, the traditional counselors of state, those allowed to stand in for the monarch, present a constitutional headache. The list includes Prince Andrew, who has retreated from public life, and Prince Harry, who resides in California. Activating either would invite a political crisis by creating a specific bespoke role for Princess, and Charles has performed a brilliant piece of legal tailoring. He has not sidelined Parliament. He has simply reinforced the crown with its most durable component, his sister's legendary work ethic. To appreciate the magnitude of this shift, one must look at the character of the woman at its center. And the Princess Royal has spent 73 years being underestimated because of her lack of scandal. In a family that has provided tabloids with a century's worth of melodrama, and has remained an outlier, a woman who fixes her own plumbing, who famously told a would-be kidnapper not bloody likely, and who once responded to a journalist asking if she was glad to be back on British soil after a tour by saying, "I don't have any soil, I have a schedule." She holds the record for the most public engagements completed in a single year, often outpacing royals half her age. But beneath that gruff exterior lies a deeply strategic mind. She is the only one of Queen Elizabeth II's children who was never given a substantive military command, yet she is the one who understands military protocol better than any general. She is the only one who has never given a tell-all interview. This silence is not passivity, it is armor. The reaction from within the royal household has been a study in split loyalties. Queen Camilla, according to sources who spoke on condition of absolute anonymity, was informed of the decision only an hour before the order was signed. While publicly supportive, there is a prevailing sense of unease in her camp. For years, Camilla has worked to redefine her image from that of a controversial figure to a stabilizing consort. The elevation of and to a role that carries quasi-regal authority subtly shifts the center of gravity away from the consort and back toward the bloodline. Yet, Camilla is a pragmatist. She understands that Anne's elevation is not a slight against her, but a shield for the king. In the complex Venn diagram of royal loyalties, Camilla and have never been natural allies. They move in different social spheres and represents the Tweed-end horse's no-nonsense aristocracy, while Camilla embodies the softer, more literary country set. However, the crisis of monarchy binds them. Within hours of the order being signed, the two women were seen sharing a car leaving Clarence House, a visual signal that the women's division of the firm was closing ranks. Let us examine the legal mechanics of the Princess Royal Regent, because the title is deceptively complex. A standard Regency Act requires a majority of senior royals and a declaration by Parliament to relieve the sovereign of duties. That process is slow, public, and politically volatile. The title Charles conferred upon and operates in a different register. It is derived from the ancient reserved powers of the monarch to appoint a guardian of the realm during periods of temporary absence due to medical incapacity or foreign travel. Unlike a formal regency, this role does not transfer the sovereignty. It merely permits the regent to execute the sovereign's will. In practice, this means that if Charles is undergoing a medical procedure or suffering from a bout of exhaustion, and can open Parliament, sign bills, and receive ambassadors without the need for a messy parliamentary vote. It is a vote of confidence so absolute that it borders on the poetic. Charles is essentially saying, in my absence, there is no one I trust more to keep the seat warm. The geopolitical implications of this move were not lost on Whitehall. Downing Street was given a courtesy briefing 30 minutes before the public announcement, a timing that suggests the Prime Minister was not a participant in the decision, but merely a witness. For the government, the existence of a Princess Royal Regent is a double-edged sword. On one edge, it provides stability. The markets hate ambiguity about head of state capacity. Knowing that a steady scandal-proof figure like and is waiting in the wings prevents the sort of constitutional drift that cripples other European monarchies. On the other edge, however, lies anxiety, and is famously anti-frivolity. She has little patience for the performative aspects of modern politics. If she ever had to act as regent during a national crisis, the corridors of power would experience a cultural shock. One former cabinet minister noted, and doesn't want to know your spin. She wants to know your metrics. She would be the most terrifying, efficient head of state we never elected. Behind the scenes, the dynamic between the king and his sister has undergone a subtle but profound shift. Those who have witnessed their private interactions describe a relationship that has moved beyond sibling rivalry into a state of serene strategic partnership. During the final years of Queen Elizabeth's life, it was Anne who often acted as the informal gatekeeper, filtering the information that reached the dying monarch. She has seen the machinery of the crown from the inside out. When Charles ascended the throne, he inherited a household staffed by courtiers who were loyal to the institution, not necessarily to him, and has been helping him root out the inefficiencies. The regent title is the logical conclusion of this partnership. It formalizes what has been true for a decade and is the king's enforcer. She is the one who takes the difficult phone calls to estranged relatives. She is the one who audits the household budget. Now, she is the one with the legal authority to act if the king cannot. Of course, the reaction from the wider Windsor clan has been predictably frosty in certain quarters. The Duke of York, Prince Andrew, is said to be bewildered by the decision, viewing it as a sidelining of the traditional order, which would have favored a male Councillor of State. Andrew's team briefly floated the idea that the title should have been shared among all the Queen's children, but the argument fell flat. Anne's response to that suggestion, relayed through a friend, was characteristically blunt. Regency is not a hobby. It's an insurance policy. Meanwhile, the Duke of Sussex in California issued a terse statement through his spokesperson wishing the king well, but notably did not comment on the fitness of his aunt for the role. This silence is telling. Harry and have historically shared a mutual respect, bonded by their status as the spares who were never supposed to be in charge. But even that bond has been strained by recent memoirs and television interviews, and is famously unforgiving of breaches in Omerta, the Code of Silence. She would never say so publicly, but those close to her know she views the public airing of grievances as a betrayal of the uniform they all serve. Let us consider the financial and logistical realities of this new title. The role of Princess Royal Regent requires a dedicated office separate from the standard royal household, in a move that will please Republican austerity advocates and has reportedly refused to take a salary or a budget increase. She is using her existing staff and has merely requisitioned a secure communications hub at St. James's Palace. This decision is vintage, and she understands that the biggest threat to the monarchy in the 21st century is the perception of excess. By taking on the mantle of regent without taking a penny more in taxpayer money, she has disarmed her critics before they could even draw their weapons. Furthermore, she has insisted that the role be reviewed automatically every 2 years, subject to the king's continued health. This sunset clause ensures that the title is not a permanent power grab, but a flexible tool for a volatile era. The reaction from the Commonwealth realms has been cautiously optimistic. In Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, the office of the Governor-General released coordinated statements acknowledging the new arrangement. This is significant because the concept of a regent in Commonwealth law is thorny. Historically, a regent appointed by the UK Parliament only applies to the UK. The other realms must pass their own succession laws to recognize a foreign-based regent. However, because Charles was acting via the royal prerogative rather than the Regency Act, the legal status is murky. For now, the realms are adopting a wait-and-see approach. Privately, diplomats from the larger realms are relieved. Princess Anne is known to them. She has toured the Commonwealth more times than any other royal, usually without the fanfare of a state visit. She knows the local politicians by name. She remembers the names of their children. Soft power, and understands, is not built on grand speeches. It is built on memory and endurance. In the immediate aftermath of the order, the king and princess appeared together on the balcony of Buckingham Palace for what was ostensibly a photo call for a charity. But body language experts noted the shift. Charles stood slightly behind, and his hand resting on her shoulder, a gesture of presentation rather than protection. He was presenting her to the nation as his surrogate, and, for her part, looked uncomfortable with the symbolism. She shifted her weight, adjusted her gloves, and looked out at the crowd with an expression that read less as joy and more as determination. This is the true face of the new regency. It is not about glory. It is about grit. The crowds cheered, but the people who know and best saw the tension in her jaw. She has spent her entire life avoiding the top job, refusing the title of queen by birth order, only to be drafted into the top job shadow in her 70s. The story of this royal order is ultimately a story about contingency. Monarchies survive not because they are loved, but because they are predictable. When King Charles signed that document, he was trying to restore predictability to a system that has been battered by scandal, illness, and geography. He has chosen the one person in his family who has never been late, never been drunk in public, and never been caught in a compromising lie. Princess Anne is not a glamorous choice. She is the safe choice. And in the precarious mathematics of modern monarchy, safe is the only sustainable option. As the sealed crimson document was locked away in the royal archives, the palace guards changed shifts, the tourists took their photos, and London went about its business, mostly unaware that the Constitution had just been rewired. But for those who pay attention, the message is clear. The House of Windsor is entering a phase of managed decline, and they have appointed the most rigorous manager they possess. Princess Anne will not change the monarchy. She will not make it trendy or woke or viral. What she will do as Princess Royal Regent is ensure that the lights stay on, the papers are signed, and the chain of command remains unbroken. It is the least glamorous revolution in British history, but perhaps the most effective. In a world of chaos, The king has gambled that a steady, stubborn, unglamorous sister is the only insurance policy worth having. And, as the late queen used to say about her only daughter, if and says it will be done, you might as well go home and put the kettle on, because it is already done. The regency has begun. Do not expect fireworks. Expect efficiency. And for a crown balancing on a knife's edge, that is the most terrifying and wonderful thing of all.